This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Welcome to our flower series. In this video, we'll be piping Buttercream lavender flowers. It's broken down into steps so you can skip ahead, rewind, and rewatch as desired. We're going to make two colors for our lavender today. The first is going to be a purple, the second is going to be a green. We're using American style buttercream, but you can use any kind of buttercream you like for this. We're using the following liquid gel colors: violet, royal blue, coal black, and finally some lemon yellow. To start with, got a little buttercream in my bowl, and we're going to make our purple. I'm going to start with a drop of my violet, and then add just a few specks each of my royal blue, and a little of my black. Because I feel like lavender as a plant always has a bit of a kind of heathery vibe to it. So I like getting just a little bit of that royal blue and that black in there to give it the right kind of feel. And lavender actually comes in a whole range of different colors because you have different varieties, different plants, and a lot of them have different uses too. So if you want to get inspired, just look at some different types of lavender plants. And if you want to make a different shade for those beautiful little buds, you most definitely can. But we're just looking for something that'll be nice and pop against our green. So good kind of like almost like medium tone color for our lavender. And that's going to be beautiful. Next, we're going to make some green. As you can see, more buttercream in another little bowl. I'm just going to start with a drop of my royal and one of my lemon. So I want to make a nice shade of green, and I just want to give it a little bit of that same kind of dull, low chroma vibe. So I'm just going to put in a few little specks of black. And that should give us a nice green that's not too bright, not too eye-grabbing. It also allows our purple to stand out. I like where this is going. I think I'm just going to add a little more black. I always like to start with less than I think I'll need and add more, just to make sure that my final color doesn't end up too gray. There we go. You can see that's a nice, beautiful green. It's a rich color, but that little bit of black gives it that hint of a foresty vibe. Just kind of dulls those colors just a tiny touch, and that'll help it go well with the purple that we made. To create this flower, we are going to use two bags. Ours are both 12-inch disposable. You can use whatever kind of pastry bags you like. We've got them both with the couplers because we're going to be changing tips for both colors. For a green, we're going to start with a number 3, but we'll also use a number 2 and a number 5. For a purple, we'll start with a number 3 as well, and we'll also use a number 101. So this is a very small petal tip. We're going to use the following techniques for our lavender. For the stems, we're going to use a number 3 tip. And we're going to use that 45-degree angle and just glide right above the surface. So you want to think about making a normal line where you start touching, and then we're just going to lift up just barely grazing the surface to draw our lines. And then you want to taper off your pressure and just move a little quicker to create a nice little tapered end on these. And that'll make those beautiful little points where we can line up our buds. For our buds, we're also going to use a number 3, but with our purple. We're going to do short lines, so they're going to look like little pills. And depending on where we're working, so the top of the cake versus the side, we're going to alter the angle that we hold at to make it easier for ourselves. But we're using basically the same technique. We're going to do much like we would for a regular line. Start touching, lift up, and just move nice and slow. And then finish. And that's going to make us a nice little short, fat, kind of rounded pill shape because we're just doing that tiny little line. And if we're working on the top of the cake, it's going to be easier to hold straight up and down. If you're working on the side, it's going to be easier to hold it at a 45-degree angle. That's going to allow you to see where you're working a little better and give you more control. But it's basically the same thing. Start out touching, lift up just a tiny touch, move nice and slow, touch down, stop squeezing, and end. And those will both give you that very similar fat, short line. For the little sepals that'll be under our groupings of buds, we're going to use a number 2. And we're going to do the same kind of tapered lines that we did for our stems, only using a number 2 tip, and they're going to be much shorter. So instead of being nice, long, and graceful, these are going to end almost as soon as they start. So we want to take that similar setup. We're going to 45 and glide, start our line, and just pull. So that's going to give us that nice kind of tapered teardrop shape. For our leaves, we're going to use a number 5 tip. And in this case, we're going to do them shorter, fatter, taper lines. So it's going to be very similar to our stems, but we're going to give them little curves, flick them alternate directions. And we want to go nice and slow when we're piping kind of the base or beginning of the leaf, just to make sure that they're nice and fat. And this is one of those details that I tend to kind of mix up in my lavender plants. Sometimes I'll do these leaves with the tapered ends. That have a little more movement and flow to them. And if I'm looking at other types of lavender or other types of plants, or maybe I just want a simpler, more basic feel, a little less soft, a little more, not necessarily rigid, but maybe a little more ordered, I'll do the ones that we did in our 3D lavender cake, where I make them like large fat pills. So the leaves are one of those things that you can vary up if you're looking to make different variations on your lavender plants. And if you want an example of this one, you can check out the 3D series cake we did with lavender on it, because we did a slightly different style on that one. And finally, we're going to do some little petals. We'll create some really tiny little blossoms that look like they're actually open instead of being buds. And this part is really optional. You can stick to just the buds and have a beautiful lavender effect. But if you want to give it a bit softer, a bit more natural feel, we recommend doing some open blossoms. And for this, we're using our 101 tip. The fat end is going to make the base of the petal. The skinny end is going to be kind of pointing away from you. And you just want to loop up and pull down to make a nice little petal. And we're essentially going to do 2 of these to make the back, and then just go ahead and do 1 right on top. So a little trio of petals. Think 2 behind, 1 in front right there in the middle, and that'll give you a beautiful little blossom. We've reviewed our techniques, so now let's go over how we're going to put them together to make some beautiful lavender stems. We're going to be piping directly on our surface for this one, so no flower nail needed even. These can be piped directly on cakes, whether you're working on the top or the sides. We're going to start with our bag of green with our number 3 tip, and we're going to pipe our stems. So remember, nice little 45 and glide, so you can pipe a beautiful line with a nice little curve to it maybe, and then just taper off that pressure at the end and move a little quicker to finish it. And that'll give you a nice little tapered point that'll really flow with those stems. We'll grab our bag of purple with our number 3 tip as well, and we'll start making little buds. And you can go just like I've done here, do 1 at the top and go down each side of that stem and make them all nice and close together. And we don't want to do the entire length of the stem. You want to leave some green showing. I try to do at least, let's say, 2/3 of that stem is open and only 1/3 with the purple on top. And once you get your little grouping kind of finished, you decide how long you want it to be. You can go back on top of that actual stem in the middle and do some more little buds. That's going to give you a nice full effect, like the lavender is wrapped all around that little stem. We'll also have a different variety here. So sometimes you'll have spacings between those groupings. So think doing a few, leaving a little bit of a gap, doing some more, leave a gap, do some more, and that's going to give you a more natural, varied effect. And don't be afraid to mix it up between the styles. Some of your stems can be more full, tightly clumped together. Some of them can have that great little negative space that'll really help to show off your work. Once we finish with our buds and we really like the way everything looks, Go ahead and grab your green again, put a number 2 on it, and add some sepals. I typically only do these at the base of groupings. So if you just have one long grouping that's continuous, just right here at the bottom, those 2 little lines, one to the right, one to the left. If I've got some gaps there, I'll do them beneath each of the groupings. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're going. If you want to, you can go ahead then and grab your bag of purple, put on that 101 tip and add some open blossoms. This one though is really optional. So if you're thinking, I'm just a beginner, that seems like a lot of work, you can skip this step. But I like to add on the occasional little open blossoms so it looks like that lavender is opening up and those little buds are opening up as well. It gives it a beautiful, soft, natural, I'm just walking through a field of lavender kind of feel. And we'll just do them the way we described before. Do 2 little petals to be the back and 1 the front. And it looks cute just to have the occasional open blossom sticking out here and there. Finally, we'll finish it off by piping leaves. Now this is really optional as well. If you're just doing a few sprigs of lavender, maybe those stems overlap for a nice little trio, it might be finished just like that. And in that case, it's just going to look like cut lavender that maybe you've dried, and that's beautiful and perfect. And you don't even need leaves. If you're looking to make more kind of groupings that look like the plant growing, adding some leaves down at the base, those nice ones with our number 5 tip that we're going to give a little curve and taper at the end to give some nice flow will help anchor those groupings. You can also do them up the sides a little bit too on your stems to give it a little more natural variety and that full look of a beautiful plant. We've only used 2 colors today, but another thing I want to encourage you to do is don't be afraid to mix up the colors a bit. Lavender, there's a ton of different varieties. You can Google a bunch of them, look at the different colors these plants come in, and really mix up the colors. That way you can use this same technique to make really a variety of different cakes yourself, because you can do just kind of beautiful little sprigs arranged so they look like a little bunch of lavender, or you can do it looking more like plants, and you can really mix up those colors to give yourself a variety. And we're only using a single color of purple today, but a lot of times I'll make 2 or 3 shades. So think 1 light, 1 medium, 1 dark, and it can all be in that same hue, just a little more color in one, and a little less in the other, and 1 right there in the middle. And that's a perfect little trio. And you can mix them up on here. So even these little groupings on individual stems have a little more dimension and depth. And it looks like some of those buds are slightly different shades of the same color. So don't be afraid to mix up the colors as well. And that'll give you a nice, natural, soft look for your lavender sprigs. We've reviewed all of our techniques and how we're going to make our lavender stems. So let's do a little practice. I'm practicing on just a little piece of plexi, and I've got it on some parchment as a background just to help the colors pop. It's not really necessary. If you want to do some practice, you can always practice on something like an extra spare cake board. Those grease-resistant coated ones are the perfect thing to go on. Or you can always pipe this directly on your cakes if you're feeling brave. So we're going to start with our bag of green with our number 3 tip, because we're going to begin with our stems. We want to remember 45-degree angle, touch the surface, just hover right above and glide. And if you just speed up at the end, that'll end your line in a beautiful point. And I'm just going to make 2, so we have a nice little duo of lavender. Next, we're going to grab our bag of purple and we're going to make some buds. So we have our number 3 tip on it, and I'm just going to start here at the end and work towards the base, and just think about those beautiful, short, fat lines. You can go really close together with them, or give them a little space in between. And once I've worked down one side, I'm going to go on the other. So think about going down the right and then going down the left and working in whatever way just kind of feels good to you. For whatever reason, possibly because I'm right-handed, going away from the stem to the right feels good, and going towards it on the left feels natural. So just give that a try. If it doesn't work, try mixing it up a little bit. the direction you go isn't so much important as it's more about your personal comfort. And then I'm just going to put a few little buds kind of on top of that stem. So it'll cover up a little bit of that green that's peeking through, but not all of it. And this is just going to give our little lavender bunches a little bit of depth, because it'll feel like buds are kind of surrounding that stem. Over here on this one, I'm going to do some gaps in between the groupings. So this one is one nice long solid grouping, and this one I'm going to put some little spaces in it. So I'm just going to start with one on the end, go left and right, and then I'm going to make sure I leave some space, probably about at least 1/4 of an inch. You can do more or less if you want, but I feel like really intentionally leaving a nice gap between there is a great way to go. And maybe I'll do 3. Go back and do the other side, just so it kind of matches. Come down a little bit and do 2. Once I've got that going, I'm just going to come right on top of my stems like I did last time and do a few buds in the middle. Now we're going to put on our sepals. I've changed to my number 2 tip on my green, and we're just going to go underneath each grouping and do those really super short tapered lines really quickly. And you can see that just kind of finishes off those groupings and makes them look really nice and natural. Over here where I have the spaces, I'm just going to go underneath each of those groupings and pop in a quick little sepal. We're now to our optional steps. We're going to put on a flower really quickly, so just one open flower using those petals we practiced with our 101 tip. So just pick a spot where you feel like it maybe looks a little natural. And I like this curve here since there's a lot of negative space in that area. And I'm just going to connect the fat end to my grouping of buds. Put on 1, 2 petals, and then a 3rd one right there in front. And it just gives us a little interest and a little movement and a little something different going on our stems. And finally, our second optional step is going to be leaves. As you can see, these look beautiful and clean just as they are. But if maybe things are a little questionable down there at the bottom, or if you just want that extra bit of anchoring or a little bit of movement down there, or just a little extra detail, these are a nice one to put in. So we're going to start right at the base of our stems where they join together. And we're just going to put on a few of those nice fat leaves. So think about going really slow at first and then just moving a tiny bit quicker to finish that off and help it trail and taper. And you can move different directions with them. It can really kind of help give it some movement, give it some flow, and really make it look nice and soft and natural. And they don't all have to be coming up from the bottom. They can even come out from the sides. So don't be afraid to add some, especially just a little smaller, partway up your stems. And there we have our beautiful piped lavender flowers. And as you can see, these would work just standalone groupings on both the sides or the tops of your cake. You can do the more detailed stems by putting on leaves and adding some little open blossoms, or you can just leave them plain and simple as just little groupings of sprigs of lavender. It makes a beautiful, elegant design that's fine standalone on a cake. Or you can do things like just the tops of these and have them sticking out from under other piped flower arrangements. So you can really get a lot of variety out of this simple flower. That's all for this lesson. If you want to check this lavender out in action, we recommend checking out our 3D lavender cake, where we do a slight variation on this one. If you're looking for some great pipe flowers and don't know where to start, we recommend checking out our basic rose video. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.